Hey, GE.
Yo, Vice! What's up, heathen?
Yeah, Boot lost it last night when I rode the Canadian unicorn of maple syrup.
Oh shit.
I need some help with the video, eh?
Well, I don't have a bow tie.
No, a bow tie is not needed.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I don't have pants either.
No, nor our pants.
Oh, all right. Well, yeah, sure. I guess I guess I could do a video for you. You know, anything for a pal.
All right, GE, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you get to feeling better there, Vice. I recover from that maple syrup binge.
It's time for me to pass out from all this syrup, eh?
I hope you lay off the maple syrup in the future, buddy. I mean, it's a problem. I mean, how many like things do you have around you now? Was that like 4 or 5?
A Boot 5.
Yeah. Okay.
Canadian things.
All right, yeah, I got you covered, bro. What's up, heathens? I'm filling in for Vice Rhino today, so I hope that you can bear with me. I know you guys love you some Genesis apologetics, so today we're going to be going over this video.
Is there any other person throughout recorded history who fits these descriptions better than Jesus Christ? Not only does this chapter show how the Bible predicted Christ's life, crucifixion, and burial, it demonstrates just how reliably the Bible has been transmitted over the centuries.
I hope that you'll stay tuned for how wrong Genesis apologetics is in proving the reliability of the Bible.
How do we know that the Bible can be trusted? Does the Bible we have today match the original writings? Does it include prophecies that have actually come true? How can we know it's been reliably transmitted over the centuries? Stick around to find out.
Yes, these are all great questions, and I'm glad that you're asking them. We just simply can't trust the Bible to give us accurate information about Jesus, or even what happened in the first century. Yes, the Old Testament does have some verses that are commonly regarded as prophecies of Jesus, or rather this Messiah Christ figure. And this is regardless of their original intention. And I mean, the Bible hasn't been reliably transmitted over time. That's just absurd to think. I mean, the Christ figure alone has transformed over the evolution of Christianity.
The Bible has been translated into over 2,000 languages and is one of the most widely printed and studied books in the world.
A lot of apologists like to use this particular thing to suggest that the Bible's somehow true. No, the amount of copies or the amount of translations in no way prove the validity of the Bible. It only proves that the Bible was popular, which we already know. And it definitely doesn't make it an accurate representation of history. It's still a book with myths written in it, rather than fact. You can copy false information into as many languages as you want to, but that doesn't change the fact that it's false information.
So there must be something special about it. The Bible includes 66 books written by over 40 authors in 3 languages over a 1,500-year time span, and studies show it's consistent both internally and historically.
Well, depending on the version of the Bible that you have, the number of books that are contained within it are different. And the only reason why the Bible is special is because we made it special. It is definitely not consistent internally or historically. Just for example, Pontius Pilate in real life is completely different than the Pontius Pilate portrayed in the New Testament. Also, there was no census around when Jesus was born in one of the stories. And the entire Old Testament barely matches any kind of actual history, because, I mean, we know that Moses and Abraham are just fabricated individuals in order to tell the story. So don't give me this crap about how the Bible is internally consistent or historically accurate.
The Bible says that it was breathed by God but written by man, and recent discoveries show that it has been reliably copied over the centuries.
It wasn't breathed by God, whatever in the world that means. Written by man, yes, but definitely not breathed by God. And no, recent discoveries haven't proven the Bible to be reliably transmitted through history.
Let's take a quick look at just one book in the Bible, the book of Isaiah, which was written in the 8th century before Christ, about 2,700 years ago. How can we know whether this book was reliably copied over the centuries?
Of course, this is a bit of a nuanced thing because the Bible is different than the Old Testament. Judaism uses the Septuagint or the Hebrew Bible or whatever. It's the Old Testament that was the first bit of it, and then the New Testament came later. So, it's really two different things that we're talking about here. Not to mention the fact that the actual Bible that we have in our hands today didn't really come into existence until about the 4th century. So you can't say that it was reliably transmitted over time by using these older examples. So the Bible has a lot of glaring mistakes contained within it, and you can trace the changes over time. For instance, there are two different endings to Mark. There's the shorter ending and then the extended one. Mark originally ended at Mark 16:8. But then some 2nd century Christians came in and appended to the Markan Gospel these 12 extra verses that seem to round out the Gospel, and it corroborates what the other Gospels said. These 2nd century Christians appended Mark's Gospel with these post-resurrection appearances so that it could corroborate with the other Gospels. This is just one instance of the Bible, or rather the books contained within the Bible. It was changed multiple times throughout its evolution. Christianity started with a whole bunch of different sects of Jewish Christians. And just to say, I am a mythicist. I don't think that Jesus actually existed, but for the purposes of this video, you can consider Jesus to have actually existed in the past if you want to, because the figure that we're actually talking about is the literal Christ figure as it's portrayed by the Bible and the prophecies of the Old Testament. So if you want to argue with me about mythicism or whatnot in the comments below, please feel free. I'll be in there to discuss things, but for the purposes of this, it's fine if you want to consider Jesus to be an actual historical person.
Well, something incredible happened in 1947 that allowed us to find out. A shepherd boy found a cave filled with jars holding 900 ancient scrolls. This collection, now called the Dead Sea Scrolls, turned out to be one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of our time because it shows just how reliably the Bible has been transmitted over the centuries. Let's zero in on just one of the chapters in Isaiah, chapter 53, which is important because it includes several prophecies about Jesus that came true about 700 years after it was written.
The Dead Sea Scrolls were a really good find, but they are only going to hurt your argument here. Isaiah 53 being seen as a messianic prophecy for this Christ figure only hurts your argument because it shows that there was this idea of a messianic person that was supposed to come and, redeem the Jewish people. And the fact that Jesus fulfills every single prophecy only puts the probability on him being a literary creation that much higher. It would be like having 5 decks of cards and you get, without knowing the order of them, shuffling them up and everything like that, and you guess every single card correctly. The chances are you cheated and you knew the order or something like that.
Isaiah 53 describes a Messiah, a Savior, who would be despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. A man who would be despised and not esteemed by others, one who would bear the griefs and carry the sorrows of humanity. These descriptions could apply to many people throughout history.
Well, a lot of people say that the suffering servant is just the nation of Israel itself and not a single person. Others will say that it's a direct prophecy of Jesus. Obviously, we know which direction this video is going, but I will say that the Dead Sea Scrolls do reinforce this idea that it was a single person. And to be honest, this entire section right here just kind of seems like a Miss Cleo reading that she would give over the phone to somebody. They're vague ideas about what the Messiah would be. You got to figure anybody that's deviating from the Jewish way of life is going to be ostracized by the elders of that society. You're also going to have some adherents that want to stay with the Jewish society. Plus, with the fact that Judaism is based off of sacrificing some kind of animal or life to atone for sins, it's not that far of a stretch to go for a human being offered as this sacrifice and it atoning for sins. It's not really that far off. In fact, this was attempted in Genesis with Abraham and Isaac. At best, this particular part right here is just a half-ass summary of the connection between Isaiah 53 and this messianic figure in the New Testament.
But it gets more specific as it continues by saying that people would consider him to be stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted, and that he would be wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities, and the punishment for our peace would be set upon him. Then it says, by his stripes we would be healed, and that the Lord would lay upon him the iniquity or sins of us all. The passage continues to be incredibly specific about Jesus' death and crucifixion, by stating that he would be oppressed and afflicted, yet like a lamb led to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers would be silent. He would not even open his mouth in defense.
Now, you could consider the New Testament to be an addendum to the Old Testament, and thus completing this entire story that they're trying to tell. When considering the Bible in general like this, it totally makes sense that this suffering servant passage would exist. It alludes to the completion of the story. If this Christ figure is a literary concoction, then we would expect like every facet of the prophecies to be fulfilled. Because everybody would have their own interpretation of these texts and their own interpretation of what is a prophecy and what isn't a prophecy. If this particular Jesus was historical, we wouldn't expect every single prophecy to be fulfilled. We would only expect some subset of prophecies because the prophecies are interpreted by people and people can be wrong, right? One common thread, though, is, like I said, sacrifice, because that's what Judaism's atonement of sins is based on. The fact that this Jesus fulfills every prophecy should at least just make you question whether or not this particular Jesus is real and historical.
Who are you? What are you? Well, say something! Don't you want to defend yourself? You want to die? Don't you realize I have the power to release you or have you crucified? You would have no power over me if it had not been given you from above.
It even says that he would have no offspring, and that his grave would be made with the wicked, and his death with the rich. Even the very purpose that Christ came was foretold by this chapter, stating that he would pour out his soul unto death, so that he would bear the sin of many. Is there any other person throughout recorded history who fits these descriptions better than Jesus Christ?
Okay, I gotta question the validity of Genesis apologetics here. Like, are you just a troll site or something? I mean, you've got this long list of sources that supposedly prove that Jesus actually existed in history. But if you actually Google all of these names, they only come up on lists of first century historians that should have mentioned Jesus, but didn't actually record Jesus existing. Maybe you should put more funding into research rather than, I don't know, whatever the fuck you do. I mean, I know they have a mobile app. Don't go to the mobile app. And I mean, I've made mistakes before, but not this glaring of a mistake. I might misunderstand some kind of scientific concept or some kind of biological system or whatnot, but never to this fucking degree. Human blood magic is obviously going to be stronger than animal blood magic. I mean, in Judaism, animal blood magic really only had a shelf life of like a day or a year, whereas in Christianity, it's for all time, but that's because they sacrificed a human to God. I mean, I don't know if you guys really understand like how many sacrifices these people actually had to go through. I mean, it's like every day you had to slaughter a calf or a lamb or whatever in the morning and again at night. And then you had other different sacrifices you had to do to atone for sins. I mean, they were literally killing animals every single day just to praise their God. And you can cringe at the whole blood magic thing if you want to, any Christian that might be watching, but when you slaughter an animal, sprinkle its blood on an altar, and recite some words and chants and whatnot, you're doing blood magic. And it makes sense, like I said before, that the human sacrifice would be the next step. I mean, if you just look at the Gospel of John, it has Jesus actually being killed at the exact same time that the lambs are being slaughtered. So there was obviously this connection to Jesus, being the sacrificial lamb. And I mean, it says it as so much in the Bible itself.
Not only does this chapter show how the Bible predicted Christ's life, crucifixion, and burial, it demonstrates just how reliably the Bible has been transmitted over the centuries. Consider this. There's the original book of Isaiah written in the 8th century before Christ. Next, there's the copy found in the Dead Sea Scroll collection that dates about 125 years before Christ. Then we have the copies that are from about 1,000 years ago. And finally, today's version. Now that the Dead Sea Scrolls have been discovered, we have proof that these incredibly specific prophecies were written before Christ was even born, showing their divine inspiration. We can now also test how reliably the Bible has been transmitted over a 2,200-year period. The results? Incredible.
None of this proves how reliably the New Testament was transmitted. The Old Testament can't prove the New Testament. That's just bass-backwards thinking. In proving historicity of events or people, what you have to do is find multiple independent sources. Not even multiple sometimes. Sometimes if you just have an independent single source, then you have, depending on the claim, you have a pretty good case for saying that this actually happened. But if you have one source that is directly connected to an earlier source, then you can't say that that one source is indeed independent, because the prior source, the source that came first, could have influenced it. And there's no way to rule that out. Another thing to consider here is the fact that no prophecies have ever been proven to be true. We have many prophecies that come and go without actually coming to fruition, unless you're Miss Cleo and you just say some kind of weird generic stuff that could be taken any kind of way. The probability that these Jewish rabbis in the first century used their own biblical text, or their Hebrew Bible texts, in order to generate this literary figure that we know as Jesus Christ in the Bible today, is much higher than Jesus actually fulfilling these prophecies.
Famous theologian Dr. Norman Geisler writes, of the 166 words in Isaiah 53, there are only 17 letters in question. 10 of these letters are simply a matter of spelling, which does not affect the sense. 4 more letters are minor stylistic changes, such as conjunctions. The remaining 3 letters comprise the word light, which is added in verse 11, and does not affect the meaning greatly. Thus, in one chapter of 166 words, there is only one word with just 3 letters in question after 1,000 years of transmission, and this word does not significantly change the meaning of the passage.
First of all, argument from authority. Because this theologian doctor guy says something, then intrinsically it's true because he's a theologian doctor. Granted, the theologian doctor probably has a really good grasp on the material, but just because he is a theologian doesn't mean that he is automatically correct, just to preface that. Now, he is correct about how few problems there are in Isaiah 53, but the fact that it was reliably transferred doesn't speak to the truth of Isaiah 53, and they really play down the textual corruptions of Isaiah 53. I mean, the variance that exists between the Dead Sea Scrolls version of Isaiah and our earliest version of Isaiah is so important that it turns "he made him sick" into "he was pierced." So these aren't just small textual variants on occasion. Some of these really make you read Isaiah 53 in a totally different light. And I mean, this whole part right here just hurts your argument for the New Testament. I mean, you can't determine what people just made up and what actually happened.
Wow. Over 2 millennia of copying this text, and over 99% of it matches an original written before Christ. And the incredibly specific prophecies it tells about Christ, all of them came true.
Again, no prophecies have ever been shown to come true. The only accounts that these prophecies actually came true are contained within the Bible. There's no independent corroboration of these prophecies. Our earliest account of this Jesus figure was from Paul. And even Paul states that he only saw Jesus as a revelation and that he got his information about Jesus through scripture and hallucinations. Revelations. He stressed repeatedly that no human gave him the information, that he only got it from the resurrected Jesus. And I bring up Paul because he was writing in the 50s. Mark wasn't written until the 70s. Matthew and Luke come after that, and they are based on Mark. And then John is a completely different Christian community in the first century that was written around the 90s. So the best evidence that you have really is Paul, and Paul never gives an account of Jesus walking on the earth. He only gives an account of this hallucination of Jesus. When you see videos like this, you really need to question the quote-unquote facts that they're saying. When the guy says that these are minor textual variants that have no impact on it, you need to actually investigate what the textual variants are and how it actually changes the source. Well, I have been the Godless Engineer, and I appreciate everybody watching today. If you will, go down below, hit like on this video, subscribe to Vice Rhino. Hey, if you got time, subscribe to me as well. You can find a whole lot more of these kinds of videos over there on my channel, and I hope to see you there. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.